Welcome, everyone. We are so excited to have you here at Lutheran Church of the Redeemer tonight. My name is Jonathan Trapp. I am the pastor for Faith Formation here. So whether you're joining us here in the room, I know there are some folks who are joining us online. Welcome. We are so excited for tonight. We're excited to welcome the Reverend Dr. Mitri Raheb and Chris Doucette from Stars of Bethlehem to hear about the work that they're doing and to hear about the current situation in Palestine. There will be an opportunity for questions. When you came in, you should have been handed a 3x5 index card. I'm seeing some folks who were saying they were not. I think Pastor Darrell is going to help rectify that. So we'll make sure that if you want to write down your questions, we'll collect those, and then we'll do sort of a moderated Q&A after both Pastor Mitri and Chris have spoken. But before we begin, and I turn it over to Mary Peterson, let's open with a quick word of prayer. The Lord be with you. Loving God, we give you thanks for the opportunity to gather here this evening. And we ask that your spirit of wisdom would be with us as we gather to learn. We pray that you would continue to be with the people of Palestine, that you would give them strength and hope, and that you would strengthen all of us to continue to work for peace and justice. We pray all this in your name. Amen.
Reverend Dr. Mitri Raheb, we are very honored to welcome you this evening. And I think you can see by the number in our audience how interested we are to hear about life at the university in Bethlehem, as well as the heartbreaking tragedy in the Holy Land. Judging by the number of requests I've received, we have many friends watching on live stream as well. So welcome to you too. I first had the privilege of hearing Mitri speak in 2004 at St. Catherine's Episcopal Church in Marietta. His vision for Palestine and the Holy Land has been profound through these recent and critical years. At a time when much appears hopeless in Bethlehem and the occupied West Bank, Mitri seeks opportunities to bring hope to the youth, Christian, Muslim, as well as those without faith. Born from his vision is the University of al-Kalima, the only university of arts and culture in the West Bank, along with a satellite university in Gaza. Mitri serves as the president of the university. In addition to his role as university president, he is a prolific writer. He is described as the most widely published Palestinian theologian. And I'm sure many of you are here because you've read one of his more than 40 books. His newest was released in September of 2023 and is very timely. Decolonizing Palestine, the land, the people, the Bible. It will be available for purchase at the reception in the atrium. And if we run out, you can also order it from Amazon.com, like everything else in the world. Mitri has appeared before the United States Congress, as well as governmental entities in Germany, the European Union, Scandinavia, the Netherlands, and other countries. And he continues to be in great demand by international outlets for his perspective. Previously, Mitri served as pastor to the Evangelical Lutheran Christmas Church in Bethlehem. And as a Lutheran pastor in the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Jordan and the Holy Land, we are immensely proud to host him here at the Lutheran Church of the Redeemer in Atlanta. Accompanying Mitri is the executive director of Stars of Bethlehem, Chris Doucette, and we are pleased that we will hear about the powerful work she does to support the university here in the United States. We will have an opportunity to hear about this ministry following Mitri, and after Chris, we will move to the question and answer portion. You've received cards, I hope. If not, I think we have some more. And if you don't have one, you can use a prayer card in the pew as a fallback and pass them to the end of the row, and they'll be collected. So please join me now in welcoming Reverend Dr. Mitri Raheb.
Good evening, everyone, and it's really a pleasure and an honor to be with you all. I look forward to this time together. And I mean, what a better day to meet and to think of Palestine than Martin Luther King's Day. And I think we live very much in times like in the 60s, when this country was going through the Vietnam War, and when the words, the vision, and the theology of Martin Luther King was so important. I think if he were with us tonight, he will be calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. And he will be calling for the end of war. Unfortunately, something that many senators and congresspeople don't have the guts today to do. And so I think in this spirit of Martin Luther King, we are coming together tonight. Not only to think of his legacy, but also of his commitment to move forwards with that vision for a warless world, as he framed it. For a world that is not run by the military lobbyists, but also, I think, for me, also it means a lot to be speaking to you here in Atlanta, where you have one of the greatest presidents of this country in this last century, President Jimmy Carter and his late wife. And I remember 10 years ago when I spoke at the Carter Center, and President Carter and his wife were there. Like in the middle of my speech, Mrs. Carter broke in tears and she left the room. And afterwards, I met her outside and she explained to me why she left. And she said, "I hope you didn't take it against me, but I just couldn't but broke in tears. Because if I have one wish that I would like to see done before I and the president die, it is to see justice and peace in Palestine." And I think in this spirit of the work and this vision for justice and peace in Palestine, we come together. But also I recognize that we are meeting here in this Church of the Redeemer, a church that stood for social justice when many other churches were shy and were shying away for standing up for social justice in this midtown at times of struggle. And so it's a pleasure to be with you here at Redeemer. Tonight, I would like first to focus a bit on what's happening in Gaza, then what's happening in the West Bank, and I will conclude by telling something about our work as university. Again, I think, today we mark 101 days since October 7th. And these 100 days, 100,000 Palestinians so far were either murdered by Israeli airstrike, shelling, or injured. Which means we have been actually losing as Palestinians 1,000 people a day. 1,000 people a day. Believe it or not, that is much more than what happened to London or to Dresden in Germany in the Second World War. And, you know, I was in Washington these last days pushing for a ceasefire at the White House, State Department, Congress, Senate. And my question was, how many more lives do we need to lose to have a ceasefire? 200,000? 1 million? I mean, for what? Who is benefiting from this atrocity in Gaza? Who is benefiting? Is it the Israeli people? I don't think so. I don't think it's fun for these young Jewish soldiers to chase these young Palestinians and the allies of Gaza. I think this atrocity is benefiting one person mainly, Netanyahu, to stay in power. The longer the war will go on, the longer he will be in power. And actually, what October 7th shows is that the whole politics of Netanyahu in the last 20 years proved to be a total failure. Total failure. Why? Because first of all, Netanyahu thought that if we ignore the Palestinian question, people will forget about it. So he went to have peace with the Gulf region and ignoring the Palestinians. On October 7th, this blew up in his face. You cannot ignore the Palestinian issue. And without solving the Palestinian issue, Egypt will be unstable, Jordan is unstable, Lebanon is unstable, and the whole region will be unstable. And not even that, Europe and the United States will be unstable. Because today in this country, you are living in different realities. If you are watching Fox News, that's one reality. And if you are watching CNN, that's a different reality. And if you are interested in Palestine and you are watching Jazeera, that's a totally different reality. And this is why we see so many young people demonstrating in the street, because they don't rely anymore on the official media. They have their own sources. And I think this is very important because now I have been here for 1 week, and even when I'm in Bethlehem every day, I check American news. What do they write? What do they say? Most of the time, they don't say much. Though this war is the most widely covered war in history. I mean, we have 24/7 coverage coming out from Gaza for those who are interested to know. But many people actually are not interested, or they don't have the access to if you just rely on the mainline media. You know, I was thinking these days of Matthew 25, when the people were saying, asking Jesus, Lord, when did we see you this and this and this and this, and did not come to help you? When did we see you? or not see you? A very important question: what do we see today in the world? How we access what we see? And for me, this is really a major issue, because the world has today all the options to see, and yet they don't see. And they have ears to hear, as Jesus said, and yet they don't hear. And so this is why I think we came together tonight. But it's not only about the people who are killed in Gaza. Do you know how many homes were destroyed in these 100 days? Over 350,000 homes were destroyed in 100 days. 350,000, which means what? Every day you have 3,500 homes being destroyed. Imagine, 3,500 homes a day. We have actually more than 400 mosques that were destroyed in these 100 days, meaning 4 mosques a day. All church-related organizations and institutions were hit in these 100 days. Just to name few of you, the YMCA, heavily damaged. The Arab Orthodox Cultural and Social Center, this was the pride of the Christian community there, a $6 million project, was inaugurated just a few months ago, was hit by an Israeli airstrike, and is no more. You see only rubble, nothing left from that building. 3 schools, Christian schools, of the Rosary Sisters were hit. The rehabilitation center for physically challenged children of the Sisters of Mother Teresa was hit. The Greek Orthodox Church, the Assembly Hall, was destroyed, and 18 people, mainly women and children, were killed in that airstrike. 2 women in the Latin Church were murdered by an Israeli sniper while they were on the compound of the Latin Church, going from church just across the like the courtyard to the bathroom. And when some young people from the church wanted to come out to rescue them, Israel sent another missile on them. So all 8, and our center, we have a training center in Gaza that was also heavily damaged in this war. If you look at those who were killed or those who were injured, over 2/3 of them are either children or women. So this war is not a war on Hamas, as Israel says. It's a war on the entire people. And actually, I think what Israel really wanted, they were hoping that they will push the Palestinians out of Gaza into Egypt. So basically a second Nakba. Something that started 75 years ago, and they wanted to repeat this today. Like one of the Israeli settlers said, these Gazan people, they are preventing us from seeing the sea. So whipping out Gaza will help us see the sea again. You can see that on. And I think what is, for me, was the most difficult thing is not only the destruction itself, but the rhetoric behind it. I mean, you have, and I have been working for the last 30 years combating hate crimes, especially religious hate crimes. You know, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, you name it. And just to hear all of these Israeli politicians so proudly showing their racism. From Netanyahu, the prime minister, who said when he announced that the Israeli troops are entering Gaza, he said, in our Bible, it says, you should not forget what Amalek did to you. He was quoting 1 Samuel 15, verse 3, where God is saying, go into Amalek, don't spare anyone, man, woman, child suckling, ox and sheep. So basically a call to genocide. And actually this was quoted now last Thursday in the Netherlands because that is an intent to genocide. Two, you know, the defense minister of Israel, who said, talked about us Palestinians in general, saying, these are not humans. These are human animals. So to you tonight, you are hearing a human animal speaking, right? But this is how the president of Israel, who's supposed to be, you know, like the moral figure, he said, you know, there are no innocent civilians in Gaza. No innocent civilians among the 2.3 million people. So this rhetoric, actually, and weaponizing the Bible against our people, unfortunately, it's not something new. Again, Martin Luther King had to deal with that. Because some people wanted actually to say that racism is something that is enshrined in the Bible. And they go to Genesis 9 or whatever, and they find a verse to justify racism. And racism was justified, unfortunately, for so long in the name of the Bible. Settler colonialism was done in the name of the Bible in North America, in Australia, in South Africa. It's exactly what Israel is doing today. So we are experiencing something that you experienced in this country 400 years ago. And I thought we learned something. But it seems we are not. And I said today at Columbia Seminary that if you look, who are the countries that are supporting Israel today in the Netherlands against the genocide? They are all countries with a history of settler colonialism. The United States, the UK, Germany, France, and Canada. It seems people with a settler colonial history, they cannot today be against settler colonialism. They continue that tradition, and this is very sad, actually, because I thought we learned something from all the wars that we have been through. And so today, I think, as a theologian, seeing how the Bible is weaponized against us, it's very important, actually, to develop the tools that the Bible is not a tool for settler colonialism, but it's a tool for liberation. And in the Bible, you can find both. If you would like to find some verses for settler colonialism, you can find them. And if you want to find verses for liberation, they are there. You go to the prophets, for example, or to Jesus. What you find there says not so much about the Bible than about you. About you. And this is why, you know, when I'm here in the South, And I hear all of these crazy Christian Zionists thinking that they are doing Israel a favor by supporting settler colonialism. I always try to say, thanks God that the Bible was not written in the Bible Belt. Thanks God that the Bible came out of Palestine. And so it makes a big difference if you read the Bible through a Palestinian eyes or the eyes of Christian Zionist or Jewish Zionist or others. So that's the context in Gaza today. And having staff there, having students there, every day trying to be in contact, it's something very tough. So for me, this is not like, a political thing. This is very personal. And every day I woke up, I check my mobile. Are our staff still alive? It was 6 years ago that we started our satellite program there. It was the first time that the Israeli allowed me to go to Gaza. And I went there. I wanted to meet some of the young artists in Gaza. I met with 3 artists. I came back to Bethlehem, and within two weeks, over 200 young artists from Gaza added me on Facebook, all of them saying, you need to come because we need a cultural hub with visual art, especially in Gaza. And we were not planned, actually. It wasn't in our strategic plan. It wasn't, something that we thought of. But when we heard this call, we could not say no. So our board came together and we discussed it, and we said we cannot let these people down. This is our people, and there is so much creativity in Gaza beyond your imagination. And so we started this center, and before October 7th, every month we had the opening of an art exhibition, a gallery, at our gallery in Gaza. It's a very creative place, and our chairperson like always to say, diamonds are made under pressure. And Gaza has been for so long a pressure cooker. The biggest open-air prison in the world. People cannot move out and in. For us to go there, it's very difficult. But under all of this pressure, you have these precious diamonds. You have these artists. You have these young people who have dreams. They want to do something through their life, but they couldn't reach the potential that God gave them because they were confined by the political and military reality. So our director there, Rana, a young Palestinian Muslim artist, she does sculpture. She lost her home in Tell el-Hawa in Gaza, and she is displaced in the south. We lost 4 of our staff and volunteers, artists there in Gaza. And we have 120 students in Gaza. We don't know how many of them are still alive and how many have perished. And we are pushing for a ceasefire so that these people can at least go back to see if their homes are still there or not. The reality on the ground are something that beyond your imagination. You have in an UNRWA school 700 people there with 3 toilets, imagine. And a friend told me For 4 days, she couldn't go to the toilet. You have to line up for hours and hours and hours. 700, imagine, and no flushing water, etc. I mean, I don't want to go in this church with details, but to show you the reality of what people are living through. No access to food, so people are starving. The little food that is in the market, 2 pounds of tomato cost $10 right now in Gaza. And the average salary of a person in Gaza is $300. So imagine $10 out of 300 you have to pay just for tomato. And when I was now at the State Department, we are pushing just for more goods to come into Gaza. For God's sake. President Biden told Netanyahu, we want this to happen. Do you think Netanyahu is listening? Not at all. But when he wants munition, when he wants funds, he calls and everything is given to him, but he doesn't listen. I cannot understand. Maybe you can understand as American. I cannot understand this. So that's the reality in Gaza. But in the West Bank, it's also a very tough situation. Because what's happening in Gaza on a large scale is starting to happen in the West Bank on small scale. And I think that actually what Israel wanted is to drive the Gazan people to Egypt, and then in the second step, to drive us to Jordan, away to Jordan. And, I went through 12 wars in my life. Some very tough days, especially during the Second Intifada. But I never feared for my life like now, because I thought, if the whole world is not coming to rescue the people in Gaza, why would they come to rescue me if this happened in 2 years to us? And, Israel will say we are fighting this or fighting that. We are fighting Saddam Hussein, and we are, we found something underneath, the hospitals, and this is like, disclosed information. I thought, yeah, I know that story. You remember the smoking gun that led to the war on Iraq, and at the end of the day, there was no smoking gun. So, if you come to Bethlehem, and not only Bethlehem, every city in the West Bank right now is besieged with blocks, roadblocks that the Israeli soldiers control, that we cannot move in and out of Bethlehem. Very difficult. And there are so many checkpoints. So coming to the States was a challenge, not easy. You have to go now through so many checkpoints. And sometimes they want you to, if the Israeli soldiers are in bad mood, they let you wait for 5 hours in the car. So that is the reality. And for me, ceasefire is very important, but it's not enough. Humanitarian aid is important, but it's not enough. What people need is liberation, freedom, independence, self-determination, a just peace. This is what we need. We don't need anything else. We can do the rest with our own. Our people are very creative, very hardworking people, innovative, business people. I mean, we have a long tradition in that, but we need the room for that. And so when I'm on the hill, not the hell, but sometimes it feels like that. When I'm on the hill, people ask me, what do you need? I said, just for the what is in the American Constitution to be implemented in Palestine. Nothing more, Freedom, pursuit of happiness, to be able to reach your potential. Not more. The rest we can deal with. We don't need aid. We have gas on the Mediterranean that Israel now with this war want actually. They thought if the Palestinians pushed out to Egypt, we have all the gas in the Mediterranean by Gaza to us. So, just peace is what we need to work for. Nothing less than that. And yet, I feel that, those in power are not yet ready to push for it. They still speak about a two-state solution. And now when I was, at the State Department, I said, if you cannot push Netanyahu to let 500 trucks go into Gaza instead of 100, how are you going to push for a two-state solution? I mean, give me a break. Unless there is a will there. But I also said, nothing in this world will be able to oppress our desire for freedom. I think what makes Israel so angry is exactly that for the last 100 years, they were trying to crush our desire for freedom, and our resilience proved to be much bigger than even with all the military equipment we have. This is the Palestinian resilience that they cannot actually suppress. And I think Jesus stands exactly for that resilience facing the empire. And so what we are facing actually today is not Israel. We are facing the entire Western Empire who continue to supply Israel with what? The hardware. These dumb bombs that Israel dropped on Gaza were released from the U.S. storages in Israel. But also, the European, the UK, Germany, etc., for the last 100 years, we have been facing all of these powers, and still here we are. They couldn't suppress our desire for freedom. They cannot get rid of us. With all their powers, we are still there. Russia, after 2 years, they are tired. Our people, after 100 years, we are still there. That's the Palestinian resilience. That's the good news, actually, that nobody was able to crush our spirit. When Jesus said, I remember that story in 2002 when we were besieged with the Israeli tanks in Bethlehem, and they blew up the entrance to our home and to our center, downtown Bethlehem. At night, I had this verse from the Bible in mind. Do not fear those who kill the bodies. The most important thing, they should not be able to crush your spirit. And I tell you, no force in this world will be able to crush our spirit and our desire for freedom. And this brings me actually to the third and last part this evening, to tell you something about our work as university in the West Bank. al-Kalima is the first and only university in all of Palestine with a focus on arts and culture. We have 52 universities and colleges in Palestine, believe it or not. We are a nation there in the West Bank and Gaza, and East Jerusalem of 5 million, but 52 universities and colleges. Because education has been always very important for our Palestinian people. Our people were some of the best educated in the entire Middle East per capita. Why education became important? Because in the Nakba, 75, when we lost the land, our forefathers and foremothers were saying, you know, we might lose the land, but what you have here, you will not be able to lose. And so education became so important. But none of these other universities has this focus on arts and culture. And arts and culture became actually what we wanted to focus on. And this is also has to do with the political conflict. I remember in 2002, when we were under curfew, and after the Israel lifted the curfew for 3 hours, my wife and 2 daughters, Dana and Tala, wanted to go and check on their grandmother to get some food to her. And after 2 hours, the Israelis decided to impose the curfew again. And on the way back, an Israeli sniper shot at them. And the bullet came like 1 foot away from my little daughter Tala that she lived with you here in Atlanta. And just she finished her PhD at Emory just last month. And I could tell when I stayed at home, I had pneumonia. When they came back, something was wrong with all of them, but especially with Tala, because Tala used to be the most talkative person. Maybe she got that from her father, I'm not sure, but she couldn't talk for 4 hours, not one single word. Until actually she took some papers, some crayons, and she threw herself on the carpet and started painting. And she painted what happened to her that moment. And only after she drew, she was able to speak. And this actually showed me the importance of arts and culture in a context of conflict. This is not a luxury that many people think, you know, this is a luxury for upper middle class people, you know. Parents would like to show their kids play the piano. This is not about it. But it's about people who see that the world around them is actually falling apart and they don't want to lose their humanity. This is what art and culture is all about. And so, culture is basically the art when everything around us is falling apart. It keeps us sane, because if you live there, you can become insane very quickly. But actually, arts and culture is more than that, because it has to do with identity. You know, when Israel, in the first Intifada, prohibited us from showing the Palestinian flag, our identity became what? Watermelon. A piece of watermelon. Why? Because you have all the 4 colors of the Palestinian flag there. That became our identity. It's the music, actually, that sustained us throughout our struggle, and is sustaining us still. I think our African American friends here, they know how music was able to sustain them in their struggle against racism. It was these gospel songs that gave them the hope and the resilience they needed. But actually, arts and culture is more than that, because we thought that we need to teach the next generation of creative leaders how to tell our story creatively. Not through boring political rhetoric. That doesn't work anymore. But through film. short videos that you see today on social media. One image of the baby Jesus under the rubble was much more important than many other things. So you go today to Netflix, and you can find some Palestinian films that are done by some of our students. The Present, for example, is one of them. If you haven't seen it, please look it up on Netflix. It's only 30 minutes film that tells the story of a man in Bethlehem who would like to buy a present for his wife in Jerusalem. He goes there with his little daughter, and on the way back at the checkpoint, they are stopped, and this is what happened. And 8 of our students worked on that film, and you have al-Kalima University there at the end of the film. The Teacher is another film that you find there where several of our students are. So how can we tell our story creatively is what we are teaching at this university. And so we started with 18 students in 2006. Today we have over 550 students in the West Bank and 120 students in the Gaza Strip. We have 22 programs, all of them in the arts and in the design. And when I look at our students, this is where I find lots of hope. It's their creativity. This just last week, one of our students created a new company selling T-shirts and other things with Palestinian identity embroidery. Beautiful, modern, not the old embroidery, but something very, very new. So they keep innovating, and they keep resisting in creative ways. Because I think this creative resistance is something that is so important to keep our soul from becoming insane. And for me to see this vision evolving over the years, it's a vision made in Palestine. It's a success story coming from Palestine. And this is why I like to end with this vision, because Palestine became important and became well known, not because of the bad news that came out of Palestine. What made Palestine so important for people even to build churches like this, because good news came out of Palestine. And we are there, and we will stay there to make sure that good news will continue to come out of Palestine. This is what keeps us going against all the odds that we are facing, against all the bad news we are facing, against the whole empire that is trying to oppress us. We stand there tall to continue what Jesus started 2,000 years ago, preaching, teaching, and healing, and using the art for that. Thank you for your support to our ministry. And actually, this gives me now the opportunity to move to my colleague, Chris Doucette, who is our executive director, a creative young woman leader. Yeah, that's young is the most important thing. And Chris, please, it's your. You're most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, friends. Oh, is it on? Can you hear me? Okay, thank you, friends. Thanks for being with us today. So I'm not so young. I actually have 4 young adult children. Hannah's 29, Summer's 27, Danny's 25, and Halela's 18. With a show of hands, who here has young people in that age range in your life? Parents, grandparents, maybe nieces and nephews, right? Well, who is a grandparent of people in that, anyway. So we all have people in our lives that are in that age range, right? My kids and the kids in your lives are going to be the next generation of leaders in the United States. So let's think for a minute about the 550 students that we have at Dar al-Kalima University. They are the next generation of creative leaders in Palestine. Think about how important that is. That is a really important thing. And the vision that Reverend Dr. Mitri Raheb has is brilliant, and he's an amazing world. Can we have another applause for him? He's a world changer, and I have the sacred honor of also being a world changer because of my association with the work at Bright Stars of Bethlehem. Our vision at Bright Stars is that all Palestinians would have life in abundance, and our mission is that to raise awareness and support for Dar al-Kalima University. As Mitri said, it's the first and only University of Arts and Culture in all of Palestine, and we say all of Palestine because of that incredibly hopeful center that was there up until months ago, weeks ago. Tonight, I would like to tell you two stories, though, because I want to focus on hope. Could you guys use a little hope right now? After we're so heavy. Our hearts are so heavy with what's happening in Palestine. If you're anything like me, you wake up in the morning and you think, you look at the news outlets, you hear about the more and more precious Palestinian souls that are dying or being injured. And you think, where is the hope, right? So at Bright Stars of Bethlehem, our slogan is hope is what we do. And that slogan was coined by none other than Mitri, right? So hope is what we do. So tonight I'd like to tell you two stories about two different students from Dar al-Kalima University, one male, one female, one from the open-air prison of Gaza who grew up there, and that's a young man, one young lady who grew up in a refugee camp between Hebron and Bethlehem, okay? I'll start with Ismail. Ismail's my friend. I've never met him in real life. When I first started my role at Bright Stars of Bethlehem on April 1st of 2020, the very first day of COVID, I thought to myself, how am I going to be able to raise funds for this organization when I can't get there, right? I have no stories. So I set about to not only work with some of our amazing ambassadors across the country, Mary Peterson is one of them, people who have been to Bethlehem many times. So I worked with them, but I also said, oh my gosh, I just love working with young people and hearing their stories and encouraging them in their art and in their studies. So I thought to myself, well, we got Zoom now, right? And especially in COVID, Zoom was all, that was the big thing, and it still is now. But I thought, well, I'm going to try to Zoom some people in Palestine, which I was able to do. And the first Zoom call that I ever had with Ismail Matar, this young man, at the time I think he was 22, he got onto the Zoom call, and he was at the time with a translator. And he didn't speak very good English, but he was very interested to tell his story. And as I was learning his story, I was also on with some folks from Bethlehem as well. But as I was learning his story, it was my heart as a mama. I was just like, oh my gosh, he was in maybe 3 or 4 wars at the time when he was young. He always liked to do artwork and paint. And his early work, which I got to see, was like pencil drawings, very dark, of like children grasping onto their mom's, legs, crying. And later his work became more vibrant as he was hired within the different areas of Gaza, and he became known as the muralist of Gaza. But, he really, his goal, his dream has always been to be an internationally renowned artist, okay? And as he was talking, we were all excited to hear from him. And then all of a sudden, the screen went black with him and his translator. And then I was talking to the professor. I'm like, where'd they go? And she's like, well, they probably ran out of, the internet went down. Because at that time, this is 3 years ago, right? At that time, in Gaza, they only had like 4 hours of internet a day. Well, now, of course, they have none, right? But so for me, as I've gotten to know Palestinians, including Mitri, one of the things that impresses me, I feel like the Palestinian people are the most resilient, the most brilliant, and the most innovative and tenacious people I know. Because what Ismail did and his friend, they took a scooter or something and went to another coffee shop, 15 minutes away, and then popped up 15 minutes later, and then, okay, it was nothing to them. Okay, so he's telling the story. I get to know him, and as the months and years go on, I start commissioning him to do paintings for our raffles, for our fundraising. And his paintings start becoming more and more vibrant and more hopeful. One of the paintings I commissioned was, I said, Ismail, this is all I want to tell you. Take this idea of be the key, unlock hope for the next generation of creative leaders in Palestine, and see what you come up with. I have some of those paintings on my business card, so I'll show you out there. But just beautiful, absolutely vibrant. So about a year and a half ago, Ismail, well, let me back up. Ismail wanted to attend the university in Bethlehem, our main campus, al-Kalima. He actually got a scholarship. This is before Mitri went there and got all these requests to start the program. He got a scholarship to go to the Bethlehem campus, but the Israelis would not give him the permit to travel. He was very discouraged. But then when the satellite campus opened up, Ismail was one of our star students. Then about a year and a half ago, he was able to leave through Egypt, leave Gaza, and go to, he went to Stockholm, Sweden, where his brother was living, and then tried to make a life there. It was a little bit difficult to get his visa, so then he moved to Belgium. And I talk to Ismail probably maybe once a week now, and as you can imagine, Ismail is absolutely beside himself with fear that his whole family is going to be murdered. And Ismail, but he still keeps hope. His family is safe for now, but they keep having to move, right? He did tell me one hopeful thing, that his sister just had a tiny baby, Adam. Can you imagine how hard that would be to have a baby in this genocide? But Adam is thriving as much as he can. His family loves him. Ismail is trying to help his family by doing artwork and sending the money back to Gaza. That is a story of hope and resilience. And I talk to Mitri about this all the time. We don't know what the future holds, but we hope and we pray that we can rebuild our center in Gaza someday. So that's a story about one of our students. I'd like to tell you a story about another student. Her name is Jude. And on one of my trips, I've been there 3 times now. I was going on a tour of different cities to interview different students. And Jude is a young Muslim young lady who lives in a refugee camp between Hebron and Bethlehem. I was spending the day in Hebron, and just the oppression, the city of Hebron is so oppressed with, you just feel the palpable oppression there. We left Hebron. One of the students that was kind of our tour guide, so we have a flourishing tourism program there. Ramez was driving us, and he got this appointment with me to meet with Jude because she's one of his classmates. He's also a tourism guide, and she is as well. And we hop in the car. He said, we're going to be late. Let's go. We get in the car. A few moments later, he gets a call on his cell phone from Jude, and she's crying hysterically. And I said, what's wrong? What's wrong? He said she had just been tear gassed. And we pull up and she just walked out of her, her home in the refugee camp to wait for us on a corner. A tiny little thing, maybe like 95 pounds, maybe like 5 feet tall. And we screech to a halt. I jump out of the car. I grab her, and as a mama, I'm like, are you okay, honey? And I hug her, and she's crying, but she's also coughing because of the tear gas. And I said, get in the car. And then I turned around, and I saw the spent tear gas shells. And I took a picture of that. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, I can't even believe this is happening. There's no way that anything was happening there other than the Israelis just wanted to, hurt a Palestinian. There's no other explanation. She was standing by herself, this little girl, So I get her in the car, and I said, honey, we don't have to do this interview because you're hurt, you're traumatized. She composed herself. She said, no, I love my school so much. I want to tell the story of why I love this education. So we had intended to go to this place that was like a little refuge with animals that was a Palestinian piece of land, and it had cows and stuff. And we get out of the car, I turn around, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know those murals that are up on a wall with the wings, so you stand in front of it, you look like you're an angel? There were some wings, it was a wing mural. It was so, how appropriate is that, you know? So I stood her there, and she gave the most poignant and articulate interview talking about what the education at Dar al-Kalima means to her. And it's not like nothing I've ever heard. And the professors that heard, I showed this interview to some of the professors at the university, and they're like, she does not live in a refugee camp. She could not have that kind of English. I mean, but she taught herself English with YouTube. And Jude's dream is to work for the tourism bureau there in Palestine, and to promote her country, and she still to this day has hope. And she just spoke on a Zoom call with Mitri recently and talked about what's going on. Now, I do want to say that our students are really suffering now in the West Bank as well. So what's happening in the West Bank, one of our students our students are right now doing everything virtually. You know, they're doing all their classes virtually. So one of our students was doing her classes, and the IDF came into her home and arrested her because she had posted something on her Instagram about Palestine. They took her iPhone, they took her computer, they put her in prison, and then made her parents pay the equivalent of $3,000 to get her out of prison, and didn't give her electronics back. So our students are traumatized on a daily basis, but yet they are still taking their classes. They're still doing what they can, and we are still doing what we can at the university to continue this hope. We are, you know, the students are. I'm in communication with them at all times. Another challenge that we have with our students right now is that there are 250,000 permits that the Israelis have taken back from Palestinians that worked in Israel. And so those people are all unemployed now. Many of these are parents of our students were working in Israel, so now they have no income. The other portion of the parents worked in tourism in Bethlehem. Well, there's no tourism now. So we have about an $800,000 deficit for we augment the scholarships and the tuition with Bright Stars of Bethlehem, but then the parents would also pay a little bit as well. Now they can't pay anything. So the question that we all have on our minds is, what can we do? We feel so helpless here in the United States. What could I possibly do as a human being that cares and has compassion for our precious brothers and sisters in Palestine? There are some things you can do with Bright Stars of Bethlehem that will make a difference. You know, as Mitri is a world changer, if you support Bright Stars of Bethlehem, some fundraisers have a problem with asking for support. I don't, because I find it a sacred opportunity for you to collaborate with us, to do hope with us. So our needs right now not only are financial, we also have needs for people that want to come alongside and be ambassadors. And the ambassador group that we have are just so amazing all around the country. And what ambassadors do, very simply, is we meet once a month on a Zoom call, and we give updates about what's happening. And then our ambassadors help us to raise awareness and support for Bright Stars of Bethlehem. So I just ask all of you if you could just prayerfully and thoughtfully consider how you could do hope with us to make a difference in this part of the world that so deeply needs our help right now, so deeply needs our compassion and our love. Thank you all.
Pastor Darrell, if you could come through and collect any of the questions that you have, you can pass those to the center, and we will bring those up, and I think Pastor Mitri and I will get settled.
These easy questions. Okay.
Here, I'll come through, I'll collect from this side. Thank you. Continue, oh, here we go. Perfect. If you'd like to continue passing any questions through, then they can come through and collect them, and we'll take care of that. Okay. I think you all have great handwriting, so thank you for making my life easy. So we'll start with this one. So this person, yes.
Instead of this, you mean?
Okay. Here you go. It should be on.
Yeah, no.
Okay. There we go. So we'll start with this first one. Oh, great. Thank you. This person writes, thank you for your wonderful presentation. As much as possible, or as you are comfortable sharing, can you share any of the details on your recent meetings at the White House, Congress, State Department, et cetera? For example, can you share who you met with, how long, how you were received, and do you feel there was any progress that happened during your meetings in Washington?
I mean, I spent there 48 hours. I think we met 18 people between the White House and the State Department and Congress, etc. It's very difficult to, to say much, but what I can say is we met few senators who were really were very clear for a ceasefire, but they are, as you know, the minority. But we wanted to thank them for standing for this. We know it's not easy. They get lots of pushbacks even for that. I think what was frustrating for us was to see, when you walk through, Congress, every other member has, I stand with Israel. I asked my friend, do you think how much money do they get to put that on? There is only one with a Palestinian flag, unfortunately, in that whole house, Rashida Tlaib. Yeah. I think everyone was for more humanitarian aid. I think that is what I can say. All of them were for a two-state solution, whatever that means. But we had another delegation going there in mid-December, and my friend who was there in December and now with me said he could see that with some members there was a little progress. We made point not only to meet with those who are with us, but actually a major goal for us was to meet with Republicans who declare themselves to be Christians and where Christianity is important for them, and we wanted to come as a Palestinian Christian and to talk to them. That was interesting. I mean, the exchange we had. But the impression I got was that there is no willingness to stop Netanyahu at this point. Unfortunately, this is what I can say.
Thank you. Kind of following a little bit along on that, and I'm not sure about the number of this, but we know a lot of folks who are Zionists are not Jewish. You talked about Christian Zionists in your presentation, but they are evangelicals. And so this person's question is, how can they be educated to stop supporting genocide and to kind of really look at Jesus from a better, more healthy perspective? Is there anything that we can do? I'm sure you and I as pastors can help with that some.
Yeah, definitely. You know, with some people, they are hopeless case. Doesn't make, don't even try. Thinking of somebody like John Hagee from Christians United for Israel. This is a businessman doing business in the name of Jesus. And these are often people interested in the Big Bang, in Armageddon, anxious for Armageddon. And they really don't love Israel because they want to send all the Jewish people to Palestine so that 2/3 of them will be killed in the war and the last third will convert to Christianity. So basically, they are calling for the annihilation of the Jewish people. Nobody called them anti-Semitic, by the way. In this new legislation that is going on here, nobody will go after them, though they are actually the people that have the clearest anti-Semitic ideology. But Netanyahu has no problem to share bed with them, not out of love, but out of selfish desires. And so Netanyahu and they fulfill each other's selfish desire for the wrong reasons. But many people who are Christian Zionists are poor people who have no idea. They have pastors who are in this, what we call the prosperity gospel. Yesterday in my hotel, I was, in the morning, I switched on and there was this, African-American preacher who was talking about, if you bless Israel, God will give you money. And so it's this kind of prosperity gospel that is actually the young. These poor people are misused with this kind of. So I think we have to do a better job as theologians to reach out to these people because they can be reached out to.
Thank you. And deviating slightly from that, a number of folks have asked where you would recommend folks in the U.S. go to for news about what's happening in Palestine.
Yeah, right now Al Jazeera really has the best coverage from Gaza 24/7, Al Jazeera Live. But if you would like to have newspapers, etc., there are several where you can get news about what's happening in Palestine from more a Palestinian perspective. But you have even some American or European people who send messages, reflections, but try really to listen to Palestinians. And on social media, there are so many of them. You cannot miss them, actually. That's the easiest because, they post something every day. I don't do it every day because I have some other things to do in the meantime as well. But, I post every other day or 3 days or something on Twitter or on, especially Twitter, I think. There you can find today most of the analysis, the news, the pictures coming out of Gaza, the videos. So at least these are some ideas.
And then, what are your thoughts about the recent actions by South Africa with The Hague? And you mentioned it a little bit, but didn't know if you wanted to say any more about how that's being received.
Actually, very, very, very well, because I think nobody can spot settler colonialism than people who experience settler colonialism. You know, we have been bringing South African delegations to Palestine since many, many, many years. And you know what each one of them was telling us? This is not apartheid. This is worse than apartheid. Every delegation was telling us that. And I think, you know, the work that they have done in such a short time to bring all of these lawyers together, to bring all of this material together is amazing. So for me, I mean, all the respect, all the love to our people in South Africa. Nobody else could have done a better job than them.
Thank you. A couple of folks have asked about your thoughts on a two-state solution and what peace might look like. We may not have time to go into the full thing, but.
Yeah, that's like the million-dollar question. And people think, you know, it's complicated. It's not. One word that I hate is the word complicated. Because, you know, I didn't hear people in the media here talking about the Ukraine being complicated, right? It's crystal clear. Now, Palestine is even more crystal clear. It's crystal clear. I mean, it's not occupation, it's settler colonialism. So what we need to do is to dismantle the settler colonial system. This is what we are asking for. Now, two states or one state, I always like to say, you know, maybe it's too late for a two-state solution with all the Israeli settlements, but maybe it's also too early for a one-state solution because the international community is still stuck with a two-state solution. So maybe a two-state solution as an entry point towards, hopefully, a one-state solution in the future. Or my favorite would be actually something like a Swiss model, not the Swiss cheese, which we have right now, where Israel gets the cheese and we are pushed in the holes. But no, like, you know, you have different cantons. Each canton has its own identity, even language, etc., blend, but within a federal state. I think that would be, for me, like the best possible scenario, and I think the most workable scenario. If there is will, again, what the problem is not in, you know, in the solution. There are, I can tell you 10 solutions now. All of them could work for me as long as they are based on equality, because I cannot compromise on equality. That's something I cannot compromise on, you know. I mean, equality is an American value, it's a human value, it's a Christian value, and I don't accept anyone telling me, you know, you have to have less rights. No, rights are indivisible. And so, yeah.
So one of the things that I really appreciated was how you really tried to differentiate between the Israeli people and the Israeli government, which is a very important distinction to make. Someone asked a question about how you might have changed your presentation if you were in a Jewish synagogue rather than in this church.
You know, not much. Maybe I would have used more examples from the Jewish history. And this is usually what I do when I'm in Jewish circles. You know, if we go back to the first century Palestine, some of our forefathers were Jewish in their religion. They were fighting the Roman Empire like we are fighting today Israel. And if you come, let's say, to a place like Herodion, which is just east of Bethlehem, you will see there the current Israeli government is glorifying this Jewish freedom fighter. They call them freedom fighter, while they call our people terrorists. So I will draw more on the history of the Jewish people. I mean, Jews in Europe knew exactly what genocide looks like. And I think what is really important here, and for me this is really, really important, is when we look at Judaism, we have to see the entire spectrum of Judaism. Actually, I was saying that at the White House, the question for me is not supporting the Jewish people. Which Jewish people are we supporting? Because at the demonstration in DC, there were hundreds of young Jewish people demonstrating for Palestine. In New York, Brooklyn, most of the Jews there are against having the Israel state, but nobody talks to them. The Christian-Jewish dialogue in this country and in Europe is not a Christian-Jewish dialogue, actually. It's a dialogue between white people. You will never have an Ethiopian Jew in that dialogue. Have you seen an Ethiopian Jew in that dialogue? Never. Have you seen an ultra-Orthodox Jews from Brooklyn in this dialogue? No, because you want to speak to people who look like you, who think like you, and who have a settler colonial mindset. And this is what we need to. So it's not about a war, it's not a religious war. It's really, at the end of the day, this is about justice. And you have people who want to have justice for everyone, so that everyone, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Israeli, Palestinian, whatsoever, can live as neighbors in peace, in equality. And those who want to keep the status quo of an oppressor and an oppressed, the other people oppressed. And this is what we need really to take and change.
So I'm going to deviate a little bit. In one of your books, you speak with concern about the way in which Palestinian people are constantly being forced out and creating this increasingly large Palestinian diaspora. How concerned are you that these current actions are going to just make that grow even further?
I mean, definitely. In fact, in these last 3 months, 26 Christian families from the Bethlehem region immigrated, left, because they lost their hope in peace. They said, you know, I mean, our grandfathers went through this, our fathers went through this, and we went through this. We don't want our kids to go through this. And so Palestine, if this will continue, will lose its best people. And by the way, not only Palestine, the same actually applies for Israel. Because, you know, these young high-tech Israeli, they don't want to be drafted every other year to Gaza to chase these young people. So they are leaving as well. And so at the end of the day, the country will lose its best people on both sides. And most of the time, these are the most liberal, open-minded people. And this is why we need to change that dynamic. But you know, there was a time when I was looking at people in the diaspora as people who abandoned Palestine, maybe 30 years ago. Now I don't see it this way. I think these people are an important asset to Palestine. And what is really important is we need to connect the diaspora with our people at home on so many levels. And so just, 1 week before October 7th, we had this wonderful international conference with 200 scholars, and among them were 18 Palestinians from the diaspora, scholars, artists, and you can watch actually all of their lectures. They are on the website of the university. So this is the connection to the diaspora. It's so important, and this is why actually we have published several books about the Palestinian diaspora that you can find also on our website and on my website as well. If you put my name onto Amazon, you will find at least 4 or 5 books on the Palestinian diaspora. Very important.
Thank you. I've had several questions here that relate to Hamas. But I like this one. Those is, what would you say to the leaders of Hamas if you had the opportunity?
Yeah, let me say 1998, the leader of Hamas at that point was the founder of Hamas, Ahmed Yassin. And that was the context when actually Rabin was murdered by a Jewish settler who didn't want Oslo to continue. And this was also the context when Hamas was blowing the buses. And actually that year, a group of Palestinian church leaders and theologians, they went to Gaza and met with Ahmed Yassin and told him, maybe we understand where you are coming from, but we don't think this is a good idea. It's not a good idea for Palestinians, and we need to make sure that we don't tackle civilians. Because even if our enemy loses their humanity, it doesn't help us to use our humanity. And keeping our humanity is something very important. So this is the first thing. The second thing, what I would like to say is we need to understand actually why many people resort to religion these days. You know, when you lose your hope in humanity, when you have been going to the UN for 75 years, and you have 73 resolutions that call for ending the occupation, and nothing happens. When you see, you know, USAID and the European Union giving so much money to educate you about human rights, but you feel human rights doesn't apply to you, what is your last resort? Is God. If you watch the people in Gaza, when an airstrike hit or when somebody from the family is killed, murdered, they only say one sentence, all of them, the same sentence. In Arabic, we have here many Palestinians, Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakil, which is actually a verse from one of the Psalms. God is my portion, which means I lost hope in humanity. Only God is left for me. And so, people who want, Netanyahu to destroy Hamas, I tell you, these young people who did October 7th, they were kids when the first war on Gaza happened. They saw their family being slaughtered, and they wanted to revenge. And the kids who are growing now in Gaza, they will not join Hamas. Hamas will be for them a light, something light. They want something more radical. Because what happened in Gaza is so radical that no human being can really explain it. I mean, these people will become insane. Who will blame them? If you see the hostilities that is happening in Gaza, you know that the next generation of people in Gaza will be much more radical unless they start seeing that the humanity is still there and human rights apply to us, even if we are brown, even if we don't have blue eyes and blonde hair, even if we are called Palestinians, even if we are Arabs, even if we are Muslims, human rights should apply to us. And I think if we want to fight Hamas, bring justice to Palestine. That's the shortest way.
I think you just ended it perfectly for us, Pastor. Thank you so much. Can we give Pastor Mitri another round of applause?
Thank you. Thank you for coming on such a holiday where I'm sure you had more fun things to do. I hope I didn't depress you. I'm glad that my colleague gave you some hope because hope is what we do and hope is what you do. Thank you very much.
We're going to have one quick word from Mary, and then we have a reception in the atrium.
More thank you to you for coming, for the live stream, yes. But a word, on this Martin Luther King Day in Atlanta, as Preacher mentioned, we are empowered to action. Mitri has set the table for us. Now it's our turn to step up. Take action with our government, call for immediate ceasefire, humanitarian aid, and that Palestinians and Israelis might have life and have it abundantly. Listen carefully to the narratives you're hearing. What is accurate? Share the truth that you've learned with your neighbors. But surround all your actions with prayer to your God for the strength you need. Last January, I was privileged to travel, as we've mentioned, with a group from the Southeastern Synod to the Holy Land. We visited al-Kalima University. We got to visit with Mitri. It was a wonderful experience. On Sunday, we spent at the Lutheran Church in Beit Tzor with Pastor Munter Isaac leading the worship. During the peace, I turned to the woman near me. As we shared the peace, we clasped our hands. But after we shared the peace, she held on to my hand and said, "Do not forget about us. The world does not care." Words of truth. Unless we Christians, Muslims, Jews, people of goodwill are ready to take a stand and make a difference, it really is up to us as United States citizens. Now, time for fellowship in the atrium. Be sure to sign the mailing list for the Bright Stars of Bethlehem, which is on the table next to the information about, and there are a few of Mitri's books available. You might have to go to Amazon, but there are a few there. But find out how you can be the hope with Bright Stars of Bethlehem. So thank you so much for being part of this special event. Go in peace, serve the Lord.